the Over and Back Classic NBA podcast. I am Jason, and with me, as usual, is Rich. Hello, Rich.
Hey, what's going on?
Well, unfortunately, we've got some sad news in the NBA world as Mark Eaton, who was the shot blocking expert and defensive legend for the 1980s and early 90s Utah Jazz, unfortunately has passed away at the age of 64.
Yeah, and he's a guy that we've talked a lot on the show, and there's quite a few episodes you can go back and find where we've discussed Mark Eaton a little bit. Certain ones like the longest 10 years with the team, I'm pretty sure we touched on him there. Anytime we really talk about defense in the 80s, he's a guy that definitely comes up. But we've never done like a full show kind of breaking him down, and we're not going to do this. Is not going to be a normal kind of hour-long, in-depth research show. But we thought it was at least worth diving in a little bit to Mark Eaton's career. What he did, and because there probably are a lot of people listening that either only slightly know about Mark Eaton or maybe don't know the entire story, because it's an incredible story how he even got to the NBA, how he even played a minute in the NBA is an incredible story, let alone then what he did when he was actually in the NBA. So it's a story that's definitely worth telling.
Yeah, and I mean, just if you break down the basics of his resume, he was All-Star in 1989. He 4 times led the NBA in block shots, 5 times on the all-defensive team, 3 times on the all-defensive first team, and a 2-time defensive player in the year. So definitely, among the greatest defensive big men in all time. And, to be an all-star when you didn't, he was not a guy who contributed much on offense, at least, box score stats wise. 6 points per game was his average, even rebounding, 8 rebounds per game, which, are fine numbers, but aren't exactly stout. He definitely wasn't a guy who's going to give the ball and clear things out and expect to win the game for you. But to be a positive contributor, to be, a guy who was, an all-star, despite really just being, on one side of the ball. It's really special to be that so good at defense that you could still impact your team that much in winning and just be, a strong defensive player and not really do much on offense. There's a very limited number of guys who really can, be such a defensive force that you impact the game on that level.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you look at that All-Star game, that 1989 All-Star game, and it's actually interesting because 3 Utah Jazz are in it, which is the first time ever in that franchise history with Stockton, Malone, and Mark Eaton. But yeah, you look at kind of the bigger names on here. So you got Stockton, Alex English, Karl Malone, Dale Ellis, Hakeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler, James Worthy, Tom Chambers, Chris Mullin, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kevin Duckworth, and then Mark Eaton. So like a lot of those other guys are like the best offensive players in the league or the best kind of all-around players in the league. And then there's Mark Eaton there, who is just, as you said, was excelled at one aspect of it and the least sexy aspect of basketball in any era. Trust us,
Sure.
It's not just this era that it's not sexy. It never in the history of the NBA has guy who scores 8 points but really clamps things down low is never like the most exciting player ever. So it's something to be said.
Right, Rich. I think there were 4 months in 2003 where that was the case. But
the Ben Wallace era. Yeah, there was a brief Ben Wallace era where it was
a teeny tiny little, but yes,
it was very short. Yes.
Yeah. Mark Eaton, not a sexy player, not a highlight reel type player, but and definitely, obviously, incredibly notable because he was 7'4". He was a huge man, and at the time he was considered, and height is a little bit variable, but he was considered the tallest player in NBA history when he debuted in 1982-83 season. Mm-hmm. There have been some since, but yeah, he was the tallest player at the time, and we'll get into more about that as well. But going back to some of the stats that he really stood out, one, and block shots is obviously one, and his career 3.5 blocks per game, still an NBA record. Despite having relatively short career, 10, 11 seasons, 5th all time in total blocks, and only been tracked to 74. So there's guys who like Bill Russell obviously would be on there, but still that's a big chunk of NBA history, and he's still 5th in total blocks despite that. In the 85 season, he averaged 5.6 blocks per game, which is also an NBA record. So
Insane. Just absolutely
right,
insane, right?
yeah,
Like at
yeah,
some point you'd think people would just stop trying against it.
right,
5.6 blocks per game. That's insane. That's
yeah,
nuts.
right. And a quarter of all of the 300 total block seasons in NBA history are Christian Marquette. He's like the Steph Curry of block shots.
Yes. Right.
Right. I think we have our title of our episode. But
Oh, I
he
like it. Yeah, that's good.
played all 11 years of his career with the Jazz. And yeah, you look at just, this is a little bit crude, but just the way of maybe illustrating his defensive impact. So 1982, the year before he joined, the Jazz were 20th out of 23 teams in defensive rating. In 83 and 84, they're 12th, but he only plays 19 minutes per game one year and 26 minutes per game the next year. And then in 85, which is the year that he has 5.6 blocks per game, they're first in defensive rating. And that basically this season through 1990, he basically has a full-time role, heavy minutes, mid 30s. So in 85, they're first. In 86, they're third. In 87, 88, and 89, they're first. 1990, they dropped to fifth, and that's when he starts to, he's 33 at that point, and he starts to play fewer minutes. 91, they're sixth. 92, they're seventh. In his final year, he's only playing 17 minutes per game. They're 13th. So, when he's in there, when he's, having the heavy minutes, they're always a great defensive team. Now, it wasn't just him, but, they were a great defensive team with they were, they were still a really good team, obviously, later on in the 90s, but they were never that stout of a defensive team. They're always hovering around like eighth or ninth in the league, even in the, the years that they're making finals. They were 17th year. They made the finals in 98. So they were more of an offensive, efficient team during those late 90s period. Mm-hmm. And then they were, as we said, extremely strong defensive team, in the late 80s and early 90s.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, other stuff about Mark Eaton as well. Career defensive box plus minus 2.9, which still is third ever behind David Robinson and Nate McMillan. Draymond Green is catching up pretty quickly, so we'll see where Draymond's career goes. But as of right now, Mark Eaton's still third all-time there. And as you said, when he entered the league, he is the tallest player ever, according to how measurements went. And again, like you said, it's a little crude. There's probably some guys that were probably over 7'4", but he was, if you go to Basketball Reference and you sort by that, he is the first ever guy 7'4" plus to ever be there. And obviously there are a number of notable 7-footers in NBA history: Wilt, Kareem, Artis Gilmore, Robert Parrish, among them. But for Mark Eaton, that really a huge accomplishment. As well as we shouldn't then mention Chuck Nevitt also joined the league at the same time and was also listed at 7'4", so kind of the big moment for him. And then obviously there's been many other guys since then. Ralph Sampson would come a few years later. Manute Bol, Rick Smits, obviously Sean Bradley at 7'6" comes in the 90s. George Mirasan at 7'7". Then you get Yao Ming, obviously in the early 2000s, and this year, currently in the NBA right now, Boban Marjanovic and Taco Fall both listed above 7'4". But for whatever it's worth, Mark Eaton officially declared the tallest player to ever enter the NBA when he did do it. So hey, it's still a pretty big accomplishment. And he was the league is huge now, and the league is always been dominant. There's always been 7-footers. There's always been tall men. But you ever watch clips of like 80s basketball with Mark Eaton? I mean, he is just so tall out there. It's insane to watch him. And I don't know, for some reason, maybe now because point guards are 6'6", and everybody's 6'7" with gigantic arms and crazy length. But yeah, you watch some of those clips in the 80s and you're like, oh my God, that guy's just a different type of human being compared to some of the other guys on the court. So
sure.
Yeah, it really is remarkable when you see him. He does stand out definitely in that era.
Yeah. And actually, if you look at the guys, who are 7'4" or taller in NBA history, he played the most games, 875. Rick Smits played 867. Sean Bradley played 832, and no one else played more than 624. Manute Bol was next. And then, but you look at this list of guys. I mean, you look at Mark Eaton, obviously number one, but the others: Rick Smits, Sean Bradley, Manute Bol, Yao Ming, Ralph Sampson, George Mirasan, Boban, Chuck Nevitt, a few other guys. Mark Eaton had incredible durability.
Yeah,
I mean, he. The first 10 seasons of his career, the lowest game total he played was 79. He played 82 games, 5 different times. And he was incredibly durable up until his last season. He only played 64 games, but every other season he played at least 79. So to be that size and to, avoid the injury issues that, basically every single guy on the side saw, the vast majority of, 7 foot plus guys who play in the league, a lot of them deal with injury problems the taller they get, but Eaton, was somehow able to avoid that, which is obviously really cool.
Yeah, and what's interesting, and I guess it kind of ties into the story of him even getting into the NBA is largely you can maybe chalk up like his body starting to break down in his later years due to the fact that he was way older than you think he was. He did 11 years in the NBA, but he doesn't start until he's 26, 27,
right?
And that's kind of how his story gets started here. So he's born in Inglewood, California. He grows up in Southern California. Not very interested in playing basketball at all. More interested in playing water polo, which he's probably a pretty exceptional water polo player. I'd say with that size, he could probably touch the bottom of the pool without even, you know what I mean? Like I don't know too much of the technique of water polo, but I would imagine being 7'4" probably helps. I think. I don't know.
Sure. Maybe. Yeah.
Anyway, his senior year of high school, he's 6'11", but completely uncoordinated, has no idea what to do in his body, and he barely plays on the team as well. And there's a quote in a New York Times article from 1984 that it says, I was 6'11" when I graduated, and I can't say I was the most coordinated player. I also think the coach had a lack of knowledge about what to do with me. So, even if he's I think I have an idea of what to do with a 6'11" right. guy in high school basketball, right? Like, maybe. I don't think you have to overthink it. I think you just give him the ball, and he's tall. He's like a foot taller than everybody else. Like, I feel like I don't think it's that hard. I don't know.
Give him the call close to the basket. Maybe let him.
Yeah, dunk. I feel like I have some ideas of what I could do.
I know that the slam dunk is obviously a horrible thing that no one should ever do in high school or college. Because it's just definitely, like an obscenity to the game. So, I'm sure that's what the coach was thinking. That no, you can't let somebody slam dunk. That would be completely wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got some ideas, but I guess whatever. Anyway, all right. So after graduating high school, he attends the Arizona Automotive Institute in Phoenix. Graduates as a service technician. Interestingly, he was working as an auto mechanic, which just sounds also incredible. Is that you pull up with your freaking I'm trying to think of the most what's the most 90s or most 70s car you can think of, like your Pinto, and it's just like here comes Mark Eaton wiping sweat off with his oil rag, going, all right, what do we got here? And you're like, oh my god, like Jesus Christ, like this man's huge. So anyway, he's discovered by Cypress College coach Tom Lubin, and Tom Lubin is actually famous as well for discovering Swen Nader as well. So this guy just bumps into 7-footers and goes like, I've never met a 7-foot player in my person in my entire life, like other than at an NBA game. I don't know where this guy goes where he's just like, hey, you're 7 foot tall, you want to play basketball? They're like, I guess, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, sure. Like, cool. Yeah. Wow.
Good for him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a gift right there.
He does. Yeah, that man could find 7-footers. But yeah, he's getting his car repaired in Anaheim, and Mark Eaton's repairing it, and he goes, you're tall, you should try to play basketball. And Mark Eaton goes, I don't really want to play basketball. And he goes, come on, do it. And Eaton eventually decides to enroll at Cypress College and try out for the team. So he enrolls there. He works at the tire shop during the day. He's not giving up that job, though. You know what I mean? You get the job and the benefits. You're not giving that up.
That tire shop. Yeah, that's gonna take you far. Yeah.
Right. Who's gonna take his hours over? Nobody. So so he's working at a tire shop during the day, playing ball, and going to classes at night. Eventually, he starts selling cars. Datsuns he starts selling. So that's very nice. 70s car there is what he starts doing. But then things go pretty well at Cypress. They win a lot of games because Mark Eaton is very tall. Again, this coach seemed to figure out what to do with this guy. Figure out, and Eaton more than anything starts to learn the game as well. So UCLA comes calling. He enrolls there at age 24 for the 1981 season under head coach Larry Brown. Yes, that Larry Brown. Eaton averages only 2.1 points per game and 2.6 rebounds per game. He plays only 8.2 minutes per game. Larry Brown also can't exactly unlock this guy or kind of quite figure out exactly what's happening with him. But he is still, he's playing decent enough minutes and is playing a little bit on the team. But now, Jason, are you sitting down?
I am sitting down.
So I have some shocking news for you right now.
Okay. Right. I'm ready.
Larry Brown, who was the UCLA coach.
Right, yeah, UCLA, okay.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yep. Left the team after this year to go to another job.
Huh. That does not sound like the Larry Brown.
No, a guy that's usually pretty reliable and likes to stay in one place for a very long amount of time. That Larry Brown decided he was going to go coach the New Jersey Nets, and he would do that until 1983 when again, unbelievably, he would leave the New Jersey Nets to go to the University of Kansas. So,
Wow.
where I assume he retired, and that's the end of the Larry Brown story.
Sure, everybody. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah,
that's the last time I remember hearing about Larry Brown. I don't remember anything else after that.
We'll get the fact checkers on that and make sure. But
so really, really unbelievable here that Larry Brown leaves. So a new coach comes in, Larry Farmer, and he doesn't see much value in Eaton at all. And he plays even less, and he graduates, and that's kind of going to be it for Eaton, at least he thinks, in America. He had been drafted in the 5th round of the 1979 NBA draft, though, before he even enrolled at UCLA by the Phoenix Suns, but he doesn't even report. So Lubin and Eaton start trying to sell him to other teams. Lubin says, no, you can play for teams. You can play in this league. I'm going to try to figure out what we're going to do. So he makes a call to Frank Layden, who's the GM, I think, at this time of the Utah Jazz, eventually become the coach of the Utah Jazz prior to Jerry Sloan. And he invites Eaton for summer league and some camps and stuff. And he says, I think we got something with this guy. So he signs him. Eaton has offers in Europe as well, but he signs him to try to keep him from playing in Europe and keep him for the Utah Jazz. And, well, it was a great idea because Frank Layden, the Utah Jazz, everybody kind of figured it out because Eaton makes an immediate impact, as we talked about. He replaces Danny Shays as Utah's starting center, finishes with 275 block shots in that first year. That is a franchise record. 3.4 blocks per game. He ranks 3rd in the NBA behind Tree Rollins and Bill Walton. So good company to keep your first year in the NBA for a guy who was about to, basically not play anymore or go over to Europe to play or whatever. And then more importantly, by his sophomore year, he grows into one of the NBA's best defenders, as you talked about a little bit, helps Utah get to become a tremendous defensive team. And more importantly than anything, Utah makes the playoffs for the first time in franchise history. And they would reach the playoffs in each of the next 19 years as well. So you can really, Stockton and Malone kept it alive, but Mark Eaton started it, baby. Adrian Dantley and Mark Eaton started it. So show some respect to them, all right?
Yeah, Ricky Green. Respect Ricky Green, absolutely. Yeah.
You would think that Mark Eaton would get more rebounds with Adrian Dantley on his team. You know what I mean? Like, it seems just by the very nature of Dantley, putting up 37 shots a game and making only, 12 of them that, you stumble into a few more rebounds here and there. But,
the problem with Dantley wasn't that he missed shots. He actually made the high percentage shots. Is that he didn't let anybody else shoot.
Yes,
so,
right.
I guess that was more the problem. So maybe if he had missed more shots,
that's true. That's true. Yeah, it was a little too.
That would have worked. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and one highlight, I guess, that he's always going to be a part of is, he was defending Kareem Abdul-Jabbar when he broke the NBA scoring record held by Will Chamberlain, scoring his 31,421st point. So failing to block the skyhook. Which,
one block he couldn't make. One block he couldn't make. Yeah, it's cool. You got 500 blocks in a season. You didn't block Kareem, baby. So.
Yeah, so there you go, you bum.
Well, nobody can block the skyhook. I mean, that's. 30,000 of those points were
right.
Skyhook. Yeah, so it's a little tricky, but anyway, that is not an accurate number, by the way. Do not report. I do not know what the exact number of skyhook to point ratio for Kareem is. But anyway, by Eaton's 3rd season, 1985, he is now spectacular. He has blocked 456 shots, shatters the NBA record for most block shots in a season. Elmore Smith had it, and he blocked 393 for the 1974 Los Angeles Lakers. Again, this is the block had only been counted that season, and then I think what year was it was it 74?
It was the first year they.
Yeah. Okay. So it was 74. So who knows? Yeah. I mean, Bill Russell, I'm sure had many, many more. I'm sure Wilt had a lot as well, but we don't know exactly. So unfortunately,
sure.
It's all we can say is what we know. So
yeah.
But anyway, Eaton averages 5.56 blocks per game, more than double the league's second-ranked shot blocker that season. Some bum named Hakeem Olajuwon only had 2.68 blocks per game that year. So,
yeah, what a bum, yeah, and then one highlight of his career would be April 26, 1985. He blocked 10 shots in a 96-94 loss to the Rockets. He became the first NBA player to record 10 blocks in a playoff game. Later, the record was tied by Hakeem Olajuwon, the aforementioned bum, and Andrew Bynum, Lakers legend Andrew Bynum.
I do not remember that at all.
No.
I don't remember him.
Was that before he clotheslined to JJ Barea?
I would assume yes, but
yes.
Yeah, that's what a I don't think it was for the Sixers. I can assure you that, Joe. I do not think that was for the Philadelphia 76ers.
No,
Andrew Bynum,
not for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Andrew Bynum. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Was there any more, or did that end it? Was that the last one?
But the Bulls, didn't he?
Oh God, did he?
He
I
just
honestly don't remember.
all right, all
I think
right,
he was involved in a Bulls trade, but I think it was one of the
the
many times
Pacers.
the Bulls acquired a player and just were like, we don't
All right,
like
all
they
right.
did with Dikembe Mutombo for some
Now we need
reason.
to look up. Now we need to look up Andrew Bynum.
It gets
Andrew Bynum,
it gets real
who is
glossy after that.
yeah, Bynum, who's 33 years old still. Not
God.
okay. No, he did not. Yeah, I think okay. He was traded to the Bulls, then released by the Bulls, and then he played 2 games with the Pacers, and then that
The
was it.
Pacers. I do remember the Pacers era. Andrew Bynum, yes.
He never played for the Sixers. Was he was hurt, right?
Yeah, he signed with them, and then he was hurt. And then remember
Right.
there was the pictures of him bowling, and they're like, "Hey, I thought you tore your ACL," and he's like, "I did."
He was part of the Dwight trade, right?
Yes, exactly.
All right, there we go. Okay, well that's a little bit of a side there, but we sometimes we just feel like we need to get to
Yeah,
the
well, we gotta set the record
so,
straight on Andrew Bynum, but
yes, right. Yeah.
anyway, 1993 season for Eaton. So throughout the 80s, as you mentioned there, tremendous defensive player, helps Utah really grow.
Yeah.
Utah then obviously becomes one of the bigger franchise, or a very successful franchise in the Western Conference, with the inclusion of Karl Malone and John Stockton and Jerry Sloan as the coach, and become a consistent team and make some very deep runs. We've done shows about that too, about how
Sure.
people think, 97, 98, the Utah Jazz just kind of like started getting good. And it's like, no, there were many, many years where they just barely missed the finals or just barely missed the Western. I mean, they just couldn't get over the hump. They couldn't beat the Lakers. They couldn't quite get there. But I mean, there's many, many times, particularly in like 1992, where we always talked about how the Blazers beat them, but really could have been a Bulls Jazz NBA Finals with like a really, really, like 2 really, really good teams as well, kind of in their peak powers. And it's a little unfortunate that it's until 1997-98 when they are a little bit less of a dynamic, a little bit slower of a team, and those guys are a little bit older. I mean, obviously they're still great, 97-98,
Right.
but
Sure.
yeah, this wasn't a team that just decided in the mid-90s to get good. I mean, they had been good for a decade plus. They just couldn't really get over the hump, but they couldn't just quite make an NBA Finals run. But a really, really good, consistently good team. But for Mark Eaton, he starts having knee surgeries and back problems and all that sort of stuff. It limits him in only 64 games, which is still, I mean, like for most guys that are 7'4" with back and knee problems, they can't play, they can't move. He's still playing 17 minutes a game. He's still doing okay, but stuff starts really kind of getting bad. He has a back ailment that forces him to drop out of training camp and miss the entire 1994 season. Then in September 1994, he finally decides, okay, this is done, and announces his retirement from basketball. And it did not take long. The Utah Jazz retire Eaton's number 53 during the 1996 regular season. So it speaks to just how important he was to that franchise, especially, as you said, a guy that wasn't very dynamic, wasn't a really highlight reel guy, averaged under 10 points per game. I mean, one of the first guys in this entire franchise to get their number retired, and that definitely means a lot. And it definitely speaks to his impact for sure.
Yeah, I wonder. He might have been the first Jazz to get retired. I don't know when Daryl Griffith
I'm trying to
retired.
think of who. Yeah, you're right.
Daryl Griffith would have been the other one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure when exactly he was retired, but yeah, that's sort of interesting. Probably Griffith was first. He retired in '91. So anyway, not necessarily interesting aside there, but yeah, no, I mean, like we said, he was definitely really important player in their history, Utah Jazz history. Obviously, it helped turn them around defensively, helped teams that suddenly became really good, respectable playoff teams, and helped transition into the the Stockton Malone era as they really took over the picture in the late '90s. And going back to that '85 series, the Jazz upset the Rockets. That was the first playoff run for the Twin Towers for Olajuwon and Sampson, and the Jazz beat them in the first round. That was a pretty solid upset at the time. I think people were expecting the Rockets to really take off and be incredible, and they kind of stopped in their tracks. They were the kind of the Cinderella story there. They lose in the next round to the Nuggets, but that was really their first. That was the first time they made the playoffs. That was the first time that team had any sort of success, and obviously he played a role in shutting down the Twin Towers. So good times.
Yeah, which was again, as we're saying there, Ralph Sampson, also another guy, 7'4",
right,
and above, and yes, it seems a little wild, these days as you're watching the NBA to be like, that's not going to work too, 7-foot giants, but at that time, that was the team. It was just like, oh my God, who's going to stop these guys? They're both big and they're both, really, really good. And obviously, as you said, Ralph Sampson could never quite get the health aspect down, and never quite got the strength and the speed of the game down all that well. And Hakeem would obviously emerge as the top guy of that team. But yeah, that was a big team, and they worked solid. They were really, really good for a little bit, and yeah, the Jazz really just kind of outworked them and just beat them in that series. And yeah, there's a lot of really fun Jazz. It stinks. I really wish they made like at least an NBA Finals run sometime in the late '80s or sometime in the early '90s, because yeah, they are kind of a forgotten team to history, but they're so good and so fun. And you go back and watch highlights of those teams. I mean, they are dynamic, and it's like Utah. I mean, they really captured that city. The city just absolutely loves them. They're a new, unique team, and there's just a lot to love about that late '80s Utah Jazz team, or that mid to late '80s Utah Jazz team. It just it stinks that they're a little lost to history just because they never made that that finals run or that memorable run through the playoffs.
Yeah, the '85 Jazz had quite the big man tandem of Mark Eaton, Rich Kelly, and the Whopper, Billy Pultz. Of course, Billy Pultz got in a fight with Olajuwon in that series. So, actually, he just got knocked out.
I was going to say, a bit one-sided, yeah, but a fight nonetheless. I think you got that. If you if you just get punched, does that count as a fight? Like if
I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that question.
Yeah, I've never been. I don't think I've ever actually been in a fight. So
no, so not to.
Next time I see you, I'm going to deck you, and then we'll see.
All right, I appreciate that. Then, leave it to the experts.
And then we'll say, hey, I would never do that. Are you kidding?
Yeah, you're afraid, obviously.
Yeah, of you decking me. Yeah, now I'm going to have to because I'm worried about you doing it first.
You never know. Yeah. Oh man, that's really going to affect your friendship. That's going to be a problem. Yeah, no, definitely. This is good stuff here. Yeah, we just want to touch on his career a little bit, his the highlights, because he was a memorable player. Seemed like a good guy who was doing a lot of good community stuff, and definitely, I'm sure he will be missed by his loved ones and by the Utah Jazz fan base.
Absolutely, yeah, it'll be cool to see. I didn't watch because Utah, I think as of this recording, they played last night. I didn't see if they did anything during that game, but I'll try to check it out.
Sure,
and see. I'm sure they did, and probably played a video or something like that. But it'd be cool. Yeah, hopefully that people at least. I mean, it's worth it to check out. Just type in Mark Eaton on YouTube and watch some highlights if you can. There are, even though we said he's not like a sexy highlight guy, there are some pretty sexy Mark Eaton highlights, including the best is Rex Chapman getting blocked while Mark Eaton doesn't jump. Just Rex Chapman just going up for a layup. Mark Eaton throws his hand in the air and just grabs the ball out of the other guy's hand and just goes, all right, here you go. I got your ball.
Sorry, Rex.
It's just incredible. It's just oh man, yeah, they're not the sexiest highlights, but I like some of them. I do enjoy watching. Highlights. So
fair point. Yep. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks everyone for listening. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook at Over and Back NBA, and also check us out whatever podcast platform you are listening to us on. Get those words correct in order. Leave us a rating or a review. We would love to. It helps the show. We love the feedback. Check us out at the Step Back at fansided.com. Lots of great NBA content there. So thanks for listening. We'll be back again soon.